Okay, kia ora whānau. Tino pai, kua tai tā tātou wā, me te timatanga o tō tātou hui I tēnei ahi pō, me te tainga mai o tō tātou rangatira Frano Botica, me āna kōrero hei whakarekareki o tātou tāringa I tēnei pō. Nō reira, kei te titiro whakamua tātou katoa ki te whakarongo ki āna mahi me ōna tipuranga, me ōna aue, me ōna whakahau I tōna anō. Nō reira, he te titiro whakamua tēnā ki ēnā o nā kōrero. Me koutou kua tae mai, a tātou kai whakarongo o te pō, tēnā koutou, me tēnei Poari HTK, e me tonu mātou katoa kia koutou. Nō reira, me karakia tātou hei timata pai I tō tātou huhuinga. Nō reira kia tau, nā manaakitanga te manaro ki rungi tēnā o tātou. Kia māhia, maki ka toi te kupu, toi te mana, toi te reo. Toi ngai tātou, turuturu o whitika maua kia tīna.
Tina.
Hami huie.
Hi.
Hi, kia ora everybody. Great to have everyone in this evening. And of course, we've got a really, really special individual tonight for those of us who grew up in the 70s and 80s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and slowly watched the brownification of the All Blacks and those early pioneers. And we're pretty pleased to have Frano agree to come along this evening to talk to us about some of his experiences, but more importantly, you know, this idea of reinvention. We're constantly reinventing ourselves, even us old buggers, as we start sort of hitting 50s and 60s, we're constantly looking for new chapters. And so we're looking forward to hearing from Frano about some of his reinventions and, how he became one of the greatest Māori All Black backs over the last 30, 40 years. So we're looking forward to hearing his story. Also want to introduce our team to Virtual Poari and get them to introduce themselves, and then we're going to get Vaughan to give us a bit of an update on the COVID, and then we're going to circle back to invite Frano to speak to us this evening. Ka pai. All right, thanks guys. Kia ora, Peter.
Kia ora, Jace. Kia ora, whanau. Thanks for joining us tonight, mate. I'm Pete. I'm part of the HTK Business Advisory team. I was born in Dunedin and now living in Auckland. I spent a lot of my working career overseas and happily married to Frano's sister. So on that note, I'll hand it over to Vaughan.
I'm glad you said happy. Yeah. Kia ora, Frano. Thank you for joining us tonight. Really looking forward to the session with you. Vaughan Winiata is my name. And really not much to tell you about me. I'm really interested in some of your stuff, having watched you play a hell of a lot of rugby, and also really interested in what you've been up to after rugby and stuff like that. So cool. And really enjoying, hopefully get some good questions come in from the rest of the team tonight. Kia ora.
Kia ora te whānau, I'm Vern Holden, one of the HTK advisors. A little bit about me, I guess 15 years in the manufacturing industry, all along the supply chain. But yeah, this been enjoying these Poaris and really keen to hear what Frano's been up to and gain some more knowledge. Thanks, team.
Kia ora whānau, ko Johnny Aranga taku ingoa, ko Ngai Tuhoi taku iwi. I'm the Frano Enterprise Advisor for HTK Group. Just like to welcome you all into the space, especially to Frano. Yeah, thanks for jumping on, man. Really looking forward to hearing some of your kōrero. Just going to do a little bit of housekeeping for the newcomers in today's session. I'm just going to share my screen here. Bear with me, Frano. Kia ora. So if you have a look here, under the speech bubble here, we're able to leave comments and ask questions, and our advisors will come around and give you the opportunity to have those questions answered. Also, next to that, we can also interact throughout the session with these emojis. If you resonate with something that's said, you can also put your hand up here, which will highlight your screen, and Jace will come around and give you the opportunity to speak. For those who are interested in this kaupapa and want to stay connected, please feel free to leave your email address inside the chat, and we will keep you updated with this kaupapa. And yeah, also this session will be recorded, so if you have any issue with that, please let us know. Otherwise, we're ready to kick off. Kia ora.
Ka pai, well, kia ora rā tātou. Ka tika, me mihi tātou ki te awa wanganui, tai atu ki te hokianga, me nā rohi katoa o kaitahu e tūnei. Nā manakitanga ki tō tātou manihiri I tēnei ahi pō. Nō reira te rangatira Frano, tēnā koutou, kia ora tātou katoa. Kia ora Frano, good to have you on, and going to leave you the floor, so kia ora tātou.
Oh, you weren't doing the COVID thing first.
Oh, should we?
You want to hear it? Yeah.
Come on then.
Yeah.
Let's go on.
Yeah, well, you know how it is today? It's going to be like that for a lot more days yet. So I just got a phone call just a few minutes ago from one of Auckland's biggest landlords who owns quite a bit of property that the Green Lane Hospital have. And they've been told that we won't be coming out of level 3 until after the school holidays, which is 2 weeks from this Monday coming up. So that takes us through to about middle October. So level 3 for Tāmaki at that stage, you know, and so I guess based on what happened today with the number of cases shooting up to 45, and you know, everyone will be sitting on their end of their seat, edge of their seat for tomorrow. Yeah, it's you know, I think when we first went into this, someone joked that we'll still be in level 2 at Christmas. That's starting to look real. It was a joke in August, but it's not now. So there we go. A lot of small businesses doing it really tough. You know, I've seen a few go under since this happened, and there will be a few more yet. So yeah, a lot of anxiety and people struggling out there. So feeling for them. Kia ora.
You probably should have left that till the end, eh?
Raise plates.
Ka pai. All right, Frano.
Okay, so I just thought I'd just share a few sort of stories and a few things about my life, I suppose. Some of the challenges that I've been through, some of the, I suppose, the talent that I've seen come and go, and what I sort of did with some of my talent. Some of the things I was trying to do, I suppose, after rugby, because I knew rugby was never going to be there forever. And also just really, as I got older and older, trying to reinvent myself really and change things to accommodate the world as it was changing, or the world I was living in was changing. And I suppose it all started when I was young. Like most rugby players, we wanted to be All Blacks, and I was no different. I think that. To start with, I was a skinny little fella. My nickname's Skinny. My dad and all his mates used to call me Skinny. They still call me Skinny, the old fellas, when they see me, although I'm not as skinny as I used to be. And I used to do a lot of running, and it meant that I was always very light. And so I had to sort of work on other skills and other talents that I had, which was speed and fitness. And so from an early age, I sort of figured out that I needed to compete with the bigger boys. I needed to actually work on some things that I was good at to start with. And that was, like I say, my fitness and my speed. That's sort of what helped me with that was I went to France actually when I was young, straight out of school, and I think that probably gave me that little bit extra edge on. Because back in those days, in the early '80s, the French were one of the best teams in the world. Most Flair, Serge Blanco, all those sort of guys, you know. And I remember meeting him when I was overseas in a cafe, and it was like one of my heroes just walked in, you know, and got chatting to him, and then I just sort of picked up a lot of things through playing in France from the age of 18 and 19. Which was great because I didn't really do much when I was in geography at school. So I learned more just going overseas. I think through the little steps that I did going through the sevens for North Harbour when it first started, and that the creation of that sort of helped me to sort of, I suppose, launch into my, more of a serious rugby career. And without the likes of Wayne Shelford, who you've had on before, who was he was like our God. We used to call him God. We used to call him God. We used to call Mark Shaw Jesus because he wasn't quite as good as God. And we used to get slapped around by Buck for calling him that. because he didn't like us putting him up on a pedestal. And that's just the man he is, you know. He was just went out there and did what he needed to do and led by example and was a great leader in that aspect. I suppose one of the hardest things I sort of had to go through when I actually made the All Blacks, and that was obviously a highlight, playing for the New Zealand Māoris was the same, was the fact that I was happy and content to be sitting on the bench for the All Blacks, because in my sort of eyes, I thought, yes, I've made it. And what I would do while I was there, even though Grant Fox was starting all the games or the test matches, I sort of had an idea, a thought in my mind that, oh, well, the next coach who comes along may like me and he may put me in. Rather than thinking, you know, when I think back on that, what I should have thought is, well, what do I need to do to beat him? And my view was, well, because I was a little naive, was I'll wait for the next coach to come along, or the next boss to come along, and he may like me. In hindsight, that was the wrong way of thinking, but I didn't sort of know any better. And because of that, I sat on the bench for a number of years. And again, because of that, I went and moved over to rugby league. Now, when I got to rugby league, I was stuck in a team which was called Wigan, which had 12 internationals. And I suppose that was really the first time I figured out that I really need to start reinventing myself, because if I do the same old thing as I've done in the All Blacks, then I'll get the same result. And that same result would be sitting on the bench. But instead of doing that with an All Blacks team, I would now be doing it in Wigan, in the north of England, in the freezing cold. So I had to sort of sit back and analyse what I was doing wrong in the All Blacks and why I wasn't making the team. And it sort of all fell back to one thing, and that was that I was happy to be mediocre as a goal kicker, I suppose, and thinking that I could never beat Grant Fox, so therefore I won't practice like Grant Fox. In fact, I used to sit there and watch him out outside the hotel when we were by a field and he was practicing, and I used to sit out in my room going, man, look at that clown, he's still practicing. What's he doing that for? And when I was sitting in Wigan, I went, that's what he was doing that for, because he was playing every weekend and I wasn't. But I wasn't prepared to do that little bit extra that I should have been doing. So what I did do is I had access to some videos back then. So I actually had a look at him and watched how he kicked and analysed how he kicked, and then took the best parts of that and moulded it into something that would suit me. I then went out and I practiced 6 days a week for 2 months, hour at a time, doing repetitive things over and over and over again. And fast forward, because I did that, I believe that I became a better goal kicker than he did. Only because I had a mind shift that I had to reinvent myself, or otherwise I would have got the same result as I always had. What else would I have to do? Well, because they had 12 internationals, the only one position in that team that they didn't have an international was on the wing. So again, I've never played wing before. So I had to decide, well, now I'm going to be the best goal kicking winger they've ever seen. And again, so I had to start to re-educate myself on what I had to do to be a good winger in rugby league. Now, it took a little while to, I didn't even know all the rules. I remember one time they kicked behind the goal line, and instead of picking it up and running it, I just waited for them to get close to me, and then I just pushed it down, which meant they had to drop kick it out. Well, they gave me shit for that, especially Dean Bell, because I didn't know that you had to drop kick it out from below the post. So again, it was great to be surrounded by quality people. I think as part of that transitioning from into a goal kicker, I figured out that that although I can now kick well, because beforehand I was practicing goal kicking with the All Blacks. I was practicing with North Harbour, but I was practicing wrong and my technique was wrong. But it doesn't matter how often I practice, I was practicing the wrong things. So the fact that I figured out what I needed to do and how I practiced was a proper way of practicing. that certainly helped, and helped me reinvent myself as a goal kicking winger. And eventually I moved back into a halfback role. Over those periods, again, had some great leaders. Dean Bell is probably the league example of a Buck Shelford. Same sort of guy, doesn't say a lot, but his actions speak louder than words. So he certainly helped me through those transitioning periods. During that time, I figured out that I probably need to invest my money in different areas, so that when I finished, I had a source of income. My first venture was actually with my uncle. My auntie was Tongan. They had some land over there, so we ended up putting money. I ended up putting money into building a motel, restaurant, ice cream bar, I suppose, on the island. And I suppose one thing I learned very quickly is be careful where you put your money, because that went under, and I lost my money in that, as well as my uncle losing all his stuff. So I learned a hard lesson there. Obviously, I should have been in a position where I was actually had some hands-on in a business, rather than just, here we are, good luck, and not actually look into it the way I really should have looked into it. Now that didn't sink in that well, because I did the same thing again, and that was with a company called Lifestyle Sports, which was a sports company, which we bought into, and it was a franchise, and they decided that they were going to buy them all back, and we were a part of that with a couple of other rugby league boys. And again, we weren't hands-on, and again, I lost money in that as well. So I've learned to bounce back, and I haven't done that again, because I don't want to keep losing my money. I should have just put it in property, which is a lot safer. I came back to the Warriors, and played for the Warriors. A very short career there. I broke my leg. So we all go through different challenges in our life, and it's how we cope with them and how we bounce back from them. So when I broke my leg, I was in negotiations with Wigan for another 3-year deal. What happened there was I was negotiating to get some cash up front, and that was on the Friday. On the Friday, they said, yes, we'll send it to you on Monday. And on Sunday, I broke my leg, and on Monday, they made a phone call and said, we no longer need you. So I've certainly had a few challenges, and I could have let it drag me down, but I didn't. I've got to stay positive. I ended up going to a team called Castleford. They ended up buying me with a broken leg. So I took 6 months for my leg to recover, and I played my first game of rugby league after my broken leg. From there, I went to Llanelli. They bought me off Castleford, and that was when it went professional. Bad luck must follow me, because when I got there, I got a very good contract with a big payout at the end of 2 years. And the owner of that, or the sponsor of that team, was a con man. So they thought they had all this money. They bought a lot of players. They ended up going bankrupt, and I didn't get paid. So I'm starting to think to myself, man, I better go home. This is things aren't going the way I really wanted them to go. So I ended up going back, playing for North Harbour. Ended up going to play in France again. So living in these different cultures and areas certainly helped me to understand a number of things, and how other people live and survive. I also then went, throughout that whole time, I've had a number of injuries, 4 cartilage operations, double hernia, obviously the broken leg, ankle ligaments, shoulders. So I've had my fair share of injuries, but I've bounced back. I remember after my broken leg, a lot of people saying that you might as well retire. You've had enough. You're getting old. So that annoyed me. So I made sure that I did everything to come back as quickly as possible and continue. So I ended up playing in France, like I said. overcoming all these injuries. And I think throughout all that, I sort of figured out how to overcome a number of these things, these challenges that I had, because whether you're in a sports team or you have a small business and COVID is around, you have your challenges and your struggles, and it's about trying to reinvent yourself and how do I get out of the challenge that I'm in. I would say that any of these injuries and challenges that I've had pale in significance to some of the small businesses at the moment who are struggling through COVID. And so I feel sorry for some of those guys, but there are still ways of means of trying to get out of that and working your way around it and finding different avenues to, or strengths that you have to try new things. So with that, I mean, I've just brushed over a lot of things, and maybe I can just go into a little bit more detail if there's some people who have some questions about those things.
Kia ora, Frano. Thank you. Some really helpful insights about what it was like to play rugby, in that era, which was, you sort of grow up playing in an amateur world and you're just sort of coming into professionalism, and rugby is still trying to find its feet. There's still not buckets of money in it. You're coming into a New Zealand passionately loyal sport, but you're seeing, because of that early kind of experience as a sort of 18-year-old, 19-year-old playing overseas, you're getting an early entree into, hey, you could actually play overseas, make money, and actually do a little bit differently to actually what was the norm here in New Zealand. Tell us a little bit about what was happening around this amateur idea, and who grasped the idea real quick. Okay, I can make I could make quite a bit of money out of this, and who was the best at thinking about that at that time?
I don't know, probably I would say I remember when we had an All Black Tour de France, and Mike Clamp, who was the winger for the All Blacks, he ended up staying there after the tour and ended up setting up a business, a surf shop in Biarritz. So he was probably the first one to figure out that if you stay in France, you can they'll pay you a little bit of money, and you can which will be your spending money, and you can set up a business, And it's funny that there were quite a few Kiwis over in that area when he was there. So when I ended up going over there, or just with the All Blacks, there was about 5 or 6 Kiwi families already there, working for Billabong.
Yeah. Those moments too, when you're talking about, I made a bit of money and I thought I'd put it into a venture there in the Pacific. This idea where, okay, I might have lost on one, and you go, okay, well, I'll go again on something else. But there must have been a shift at that moment, which was, okay, I've actually probably can't invest in others. I've got to invest in myself now again. And so tell us about that reinvention moment where you thought, no, I'm not going to lose 3 times here. Just walk us through a little bit about, because it would have been hard actually coming off, you've been beaten around a bit in the professionalism. You've been given undertakings by large clubs that don't come through. And then you're probably thinking, shit, actually, I've got to back myself at some point and not let others determine my future. But what was going on then?
Yeah, look, it was certainly pretty tough. I think especially when I came back after playing, or when I finished my career, I actually bumped into Eric Rush, and he was starting to do some seminars for a guy, and we ended up. So that's how I ended up actually starting doing some corporate training. Working with blue collar workers and just giving them some tools to overcome some of the challenges that they may face, which sort of put me in a space where I was like, it was great to help these guys hopefully achieve what they were after through sharing stories and relating it back to where they're at the moment. And I think one of those things was, and I was doing it subconsciously, and it's talking about the things that I can control, the things I can influence, and the things I have no control over. And the fact that when I was in the All Blacks, I was sitting in that no control area as far as Grant Fox was concerned. Now, a lot of people, when they have some challenges and issues, will put themselves in that I've got no control over this, so I'm going to, I'm just going to bitch and moan about it, as opposed to like what I should have been doing is saying, well, actually, I do have control over it. I can go out and I can practice, and I can upskill myself, and I can get better at that. And most people don't do that, and I think a lot of young Māori are like this as well, and Pacific Islanders, or even anybody really, any young person, is that the moment I shifted out of an area of no control, it means that I have to do some work. And a lot of people would rather moan about it than shift it out of having no control or no influence, influence or control. So I sort of thought, okay, well, when I went to Wigan and started practicing goal kicking, and I saw that model, I was like, well, actually, I have gone from having no control over it to controlling my destiny because of my change in mindset. And that was really it. And I probably would have got I would have gone a lot further if I'd had that little model earlier, but I didn't.
It's a wonderful observation, about your young self like that, because Grant probably would have thought the same thing. Shit, I'm not as quick as these Maoris. I'm not as strong as these Polynesians. I've actually just got to work on something that I'm really good at, and that's kicking. And I've just got to be really. So he was kind of doing exactly what you were doing, but had chosen kicking as his superpower in order to be a great player. I think looking at that moment, it's clear that he never even scored a try for the All Blacks. It's almost impossible in what, 100 games or so, or whatever.
I scored one, but it was disallowed.
Yeah, it was disallowed, right? So not easy to do, like to stay in an AB jersey and never score a try in the whole period. So he'd worked that out. I know Vaughan's got a follow-up question on this, so I'm gonna pass it over to Vaughan.
Yeah. Hey, really enjoyed listening to that, Frano. In terms of your sporting career and then post-sporting life and talking about the ups and downs, and a word you've used a few times tonight is reinvention, and I think we're all kind of aware of doing that in our lives. I can remember specifically you called your career at the Warriors short, being at the park the day you broke your leg, and I remember Mark Gaia tackled you, and that you went down, and when they played it in slow motion, it was one of the most sickening injuries. I think your foot was literally pointing backwards on your leg, and that was kind of the end of that. So I remember that. But in terms of the ups and downs, whether it be sporting or commercial life or post-sporting life, would there be a point where you'd consider your rock bottom the deepest part of coming back from? So like obviously the recovery of a massive injury, but is there something that stands out of, my God, it can't get any worse than this and I've got to come back?
Probably when I finally came back from overseas for the last time, and then my marriage broke up. So that was probably the lowest part of everything, because I hadn't at that time got a job either. Like I was still just wondering what am I going to do, and so I think not so much then, but a few years later, I figured out that like sometimes you just got to find some time to be alone and a time to think about things. What I do now is, because I do Wakahama, if I am down or whatever, I'll just go out in a OC1 and park myself out in the middle of the channel, watch the sun come up over Rangitoto, and then just relax, breathe in and watch the sun come up, and that's sort of what I started to do. Just have me time and away from everybody and the quiet and just the peace and nature, So And I think that's important no matter what you do, that you need to have some time away, especially these days. You know, there's a lot of pressure on people, whether it's with for family or for business, or even for sporting. You know, even with sport these days, you know, there's a lot of pressure on people to make certain levels, and if they don't, and they've spent their whole life trying to get there and they don't, then someone needs to be there to catch them, I suppose, because otherwise there's a lot of people these days who aren't strong enough and need that help and support. And it's just, and even now with COVID, it's getting harder and harder for people, for the youth, for businesses. So it's even more important for family and friends to be close to those people in this, especially in these times.
Yeah. Frano, you mentioned before that you did see a lot of talent over those years, probably Māori, non-Māori, French talent. Is there anybody that really sticks out as someone that might have really benefited from that advice of, hey, you know, work on your weaknesses and don't just keep carrying your strengths? You know, you got to think about reinvention. Who do you think you would have loved to have reached out to back then, just to say, hey, man, you know, you've got so much going?
I'm just trying to think. I can't. I might have to come back to you on that one. I'm just trying to think of. I mean, there were some talented kids around. Even these days, I mean, I've been coaching North Shore Prems for a few years, off and on. So even then, you know, I've had a couple of Māori boys who have turned up and they're full of talent, but again, their work ethic isn't there, and they can't be bothered because it's just too hard. And it's the old story, you know, like talent will get you so far, and then there's a lot of other people who are talented as well, but they're going to be talented and they're going to do the hard work. And then there's the ones who aren't quite as talented, but they will work harder than anybody else and overtake you anyway. So that is frustrating, especially as a coach, and trying to lead these young men and get the best out of them. Sometimes they just, it's just not for them. The drive for them isn't as strong as your drive for them, you know what I mean? Which is sad, but that's just the reality of things at the moment.
Yeah, I know Pete's bursting at the seams to ask a few questions, and even though his biased refereeing for North Harbour has impacted your results yet, but yeah, Pete, could you declare your self-interest?
One time he said our winger was out when we scored a try, and he wasn't.
Yeah, exactly.
Just quietly.
There you go. Honest,
I was just cheering. I put my flag up. I was the assistant referee, put my flag up cheering. It was pretty embarrassing. Hey, look, I agree with Frano says about reinventing yourself. And I came to North Shore in '85, and I was a young aspiring halfback, and didn't make the Prem team that year, and ended up playing my first game against my old club on the right wing. So you tend to look at yourself and think, how did that happen? And then I wanted to, I guess, secure a Prem spot, but it was very difficult because there's lots of talent. And Frano made the All Blacks, which meant I often got to play. But I soon realised I needed to add something, so I started goal kicking, and I just practiced till I got good enough to be a Prem goal kicker. And that'll keep you in the team. You don't have to be the best player, but if you can kick goals and play a position competently, it'll get you in the team. So that was sort of my mindset change on how to get myself in the team. And in '87, we played the semi-final, and Buck and Frano were in Australia playing the Bledisloe Cup. And we got through to the final, and I was in danger of being dropped because Frano was coming back. But Brad Johnson, our coach at the time, put me on the right wing to play in the final. But you do have to reinvent yourself. And I used to have a thing on Thursday nights, so I couldn't go for a beer until I'd kick 10 kicks in a row from straight in front, which everyone thinks is pretty easy, 30 metres out, straight in front, 10 in a row. We'd finish training, say 8 o'clock, 8:15. Some nights I was still there at 9:45. The bar was always closed because I hadn't kicked 10 in a row. But as Frano said, that's about setting yourself a standard and measuring yourself to it. And, people can set their own standards, but at some point you've got to set your own. And, Frano, when you broke your leg in '85, I mean, the courage you showed to come back was absolutely incredible. And not many people show that kind of fortitude, but you never quit. And I've always thought that throughout your career, you never quit. So I think, you know, it's a lesson for a lot of young people, not just young Māori boys coming through. You know, do the job, but, you know, sort of do it honorably. You know, you got to commit. You know, don't be half-assed about it. You want to do something, commit. No one's going to give it to you. You got to take it. And yeah, I was always very happy to play in the same team as you. And yeah, I think you've done a lot for the game, done a lot for our club.
Yes, Pete.
What was I going to say? Carry on, mate.
I think as part of that goal kicking, like Pete was saying, I think what I actually did was I had to sort of figure out, well, I'm going to be playing against or in front of a lot of people, you know. And so another thing I had to work on is like, it's okay to kick 95% or 100% while I was practicing, but I need to be put under pressure because there wasn't a lot of pressure there. I got the systems and all that right, but I needed to be put under pressure and to see if I would buckle and if I could stay focused. So I remember when you're at Wigan, you're a bit of a legend. The whole club and the team are, and wherever you go, there's just kids for Africa, you know. So I remember the very first time I started practicing, or about a week later, I was out, and there's all these kids were around. So I made them run in front of me, throw clothes past my face while I was standing up. But once I started running in, get out of the way because you might get kicked with the ball. And I wanted them to do that to try and put me off. And I said that I would, because there's nothing like a bit of motivation. I said, if I miss, I'll buy you all an ice block. The first time I started doing it, I started missing. The next couple of days, the number of kids doubled and then tripled, and I'm like, holy heck, this is costing me a fortune. I need to go away, make sure I'm getting them all, then come back out again. So just that little thing helped me to focus on the goal kicking, like another aspect to the goal kicking, so that when I was in front of like a Wigan in front of 90,000 people, or in front of 30,000 people in a packed stadium at Wigan, then the noise, I could zone out, focus on what I had to do and kick it without any problems and just be in that zone. And I think I wouldn't have got into that zone as quickly if I hadn't had little things like those kids trying to put me off kicking, you know. So it was just another little thing that I had to work on.
It's very cool. I mean, you know, you've found a way to put pressure on yourself and not just stay in a sort of, you know, a little closed box where you just sort of, you know, kicking by yourself with no pressure, but found another way. And it's a really good reminder about whatever we do now in our 50s and 60s is what are the things that we do now like that puts a bit of pressure on us just to, you know, make us perform a little bit higher, and whether we do that anymore. Do we just use that as a story that we did in the past, or are we still using that now in our later age? Are we still using some of those tricks? I just sort of put it back to you. Are you still conscious? Okay, I've had all these hard lessons about how to kind of just lift my game. Do I still use those same lessons now that I'm older, or am I just more acutely aware of my weaknesses?
I'm more acutely aware of my weaknesses. I suppose things change as you get a little bit older, and you're pretty chilled out and relaxed about things. And look, and sometimes I'm probably too relaxed. I think it depends on what your end goal is. And if your end goal is here, but you're only doing this much work to get there, then it's never going to work. But if your end goal is there and you want to get there, then you'll do you need to do what it takes to get there. And look, when it came to goal kicking, I hated it. You don't have to like it, but I liked the end result, and I knew I had to do it to get to the end result. And I loved the end result, but I didn't really like the practice, but I knew that was part of it. And so I knew that I used to do I used to do 24 kicks. No, 32 kicks I used to do. If I could get all 32 over without missing, I could go home. And that was it.
We're about from the 22 from the sideline.
I do two kicks from each side, from two kicks from each spot, and there'd be 6 spots on the left, 6 spots on the right, and the last one being right on the corner. And then I would do 2 on the 40-meter mark, and then 2 either side of that on an angle. And that's I would do that every day training. So like I say, if I was doing it away from where kids could be, then I had to go and get the balls. I like fitness, but if I didn't have to run, then I wouldn't run, But I especially to chase balls. So I made sure that I got as many as I could straight off the bat, because I would have to get 2 over in each spot before I moved to the next spot. And so I got very good at not missing, because I wanted to go home after training. And it's funny how some things motivate you, but that's what worked for me. And it worked, yeah. So.
Well, we got a party that's come and just sort of drilling down a bit more on lifestyle sports. So there was an opportunity there as well-known sports figures to use your experience to help motivate and help train others, both in the corporate world. Tell us how you think that the unraveling of that ended.
Look, I think there was myself and a couple of other rugby boys, or league boys, and I think we didn't have hands-on. We used to have meetings and have a little say in things, but it wasn't really our cup of tea. And these boys had started that company. I think what happened was we got a rude awakening as far as we set up the first big store in Queen Street with all the big, a whole wall of TVs at the back showing sports and all that. And all the other big companies ganged up against us and wouldn't supply us, told Nike and those companies not to supply us. And so that, it was probably something we weren't really thinking that would happen to us, but it did. And then obviously after that, it was everyone else started having big TVs in the things and all that sort of stuff. So we were just by McDonald's. So yeah, I think we just got ganged up on.
Yeah. Tom Manueli's asking, hey, your son-in-law, how's he going in the game?
Oh, mate, he was pretty average when he played for East Coast Bays, but that's because North Shore used to beat them, I think. No, he's all right. He's all right. I do remember when my oldest boy started playing Prem rugby, and I think Ren got him in a headlock and was roughing him up a little bit, which my daughter didn't like too much, I don't think so. But he's good. He's done a great job. He's done a great job with the family, and obviously with his business, they're doing an awesome job. So, he's doing very well, and he's very successful at the moment, and good on him. Good on him. He's doing great work.
Kia ora, Ron. We talked to Frano Botica this evening. If you've just joined us or you've just come in, we've got about 14 minutes or so left to spend with him. So we're going to circle back and get him to talk a little bit in the last 10 minutes or so about what he's up to now and what is his reinvention, and get him to talk a little bit more about that. Please, if you have a question or even a mihi, that's be great to hear from you. Just shout out, and we'll pass it to Vaughan. Vaughan's got another party. Ka pai, Vaughan.
Yeah, I can't get this reinvention word out of my head. I love it. In terms of where we're at now, and considering the crazy times we're in for a lot of people, particularly small business owners, what do you see for yourself over the next wee while, Frano?
Look, I currently sell real estate. Obviously, pretty hard to sell real estate when you're stuck in your house. Look, things are going okay. I think that some of the things, I suppose I'm at a, like I say, I'm at a stage where I'm pretty happy with just cruising. I don't really want too much pressure. Don't need too much pressure. Obviously, some of the things that I suppose it's funny because people who see you and go, oh, you're selling real estate, man, everyone want to talk to you. Well, the funny thing is that, especially up in Auckland, is that everybody knows 5 or 6 real estate agents because there's a lot of them. So the competition is strong. There are some people making a lot of money, and a lot of people not making much money. You know, so I'm happy where I'm at. I suppose, you know, if I sit back and analyze everything, that I probably should do a little bit more work and then go back to some of the things that I am got me successful in other areas. But I suppose, look, if you're happy where you're at, then that's all good, you know. If you want to make $1 million, then you can definitely do that in real estate, but it takes a bit of, you know, it takes a lot of work. And there's a lot of people out there been doing it for a long time. But like I say, I'm just happy, and if you're happy in the space you're in, then that's all right. If you want to grow and develop, then again, there's certain things that you have to go and do. Will I stay in real estate forever? I'm not sure. But if I don't, then it would need to be a good reason for me to move out of it. You know, up until the end of, the start of COVID, for example, I was still running some seminars for corporates in the blue collar space, and I did that because I still enjoyed it. You know, but again, they're all these things are commission-based jobs, or in the training side of things, you might just run seminars for 6 or 8 weeks with one company, and then you'll move to another company if there's work around. But at the moment with COVID, there's not a lot of that work there. And since probably 6 months prior to COVID, I said that I wouldn't be running any more seminars, so I haven't for probably nearly 2 years now. So because it just takes up too much time, and although I enjoyed it, it waters down me trying to sell real estate as well. Again, I went and coached Philippine Sevens for 4 years, probably 2 or 3 times a year. So I would shoot off and do that in the Asian Sevens circuit. And again, it waters down what I was trying to do with real estate. You know, so sometimes you do have to be a little careful that you haven't got your fingers in too many pies, and everything gets watered down and you end up stuck, you know. So yeah, I've been a little guilty of doing that, and that's probably why I've just stopped doing that side of things overseas.
Yeah, I think one of the times I met you, Frano, was in Hawaii. You guys had that sort of annual visit to Hawaii to help train Hawaiians in rugby schools and things. Yeah. And I remember meeting you there at one of the Australian Embassy gigs. And I think the French ambassador, we were talking together, and the French ambassador came up and says, All Blacks. He thought I was an All Black too. And of course, I never let on that I wasn't. And so you and I took him, I think, and Walter Little was there. We all 3 were in this photo, and the French ambassador and his wife was very, very happy that I caught 3 great Māori All Blacks. Of course, I never said a word the whole time, and neither did you. So thank you, Frano. That was very kind of you. I think coming back to housing and real estate and Auckland, and one of the most difficult subjects actually in New Zealand we've had here for the last 20 years is, we've got a system that's pretty broken. It's hard to buy. We now got people talking about saving for homes when they're 17, stuff that we never even thought about at that age. And you would have seen some pretty weird things in the Auckland developer market, because there's a few sharks swimming around Auckland building homes. And so, yeah, share with us some of your kind of insights about this this market in Auckland and housing, and what's actually coming up? What are you seeing?
Well, at the moment, we are, like, especially the company I'm working with at the moment, UP Real Estate. We are still selling a number of houses, even in lockdown, albeit the higher end market. There are people buying houses for 7 million without even having seen it, like, or visited it. There's a lot of people who are buying from offshore who can't get back to the country. And the challenge is Auckland has to move further out to Warkworth, etc., to try and build some houses which people can afford, or out west, further out west, out past Kumeu. The challenge is the I suppose the building industry. For a country who's got plenty of timber, it's pretty expensive, and it's probably because it all goes offshore and then comes back again, which seems ridiculous, and I suppose there's some big companies who have a monopoly on certain things, so it makes it a lot harder to be competitive. I think that the council obviously don't make life easy for anybody. They drag it out as much as possible, and even now, unless you're doing bulk, for some of the developers who do 2 or 3 properties, even for them, they're starting to wonder, well, how do you make money out of building houses when the cost of everything is so expensive?
Mm-hmm.
And yet they want you to build 10,000 houses a year.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. But like, if you were now in your 20s and you were thinking, okay, I can't actually get in a city, Auckland, I can't get here, I might have a little apartment, 20 square meters, but where would you suggest actually outside of Auckland is the places to look at now? Because it is, 45 minutes, hour and 15 now out of CBD.
I would say, I mean, I don't know what the pricing is around Huntly. Around Huntly would be, like, especially if you want to be close to Auckland, the Huntly area. I mean, up north, up by Whangarei, up that way. There's no reason why you wouldn't want to live up there. The challenge you have in at the moment is that all these guys have, you've got to have a job. And unless you have a job that is remote, or you only have to go into town once or twice a week, then it becomes pretty difficult, because not everyone can shift into the small towns and expect to work. Now with COVID, this could probably change a little bit because of a lot of remote working. I mean, my missus works for the bank, so even when she was when COVID wasn't here, she could spend 2 or 3 days and work from home. And so I think you'll find a lot of that's going to happen. Now, if that does happen, then people can move out of Auckland. But until that does happen, I don't know. I don't see an end to the demand, obviously, for houses. I think the challenge is that a lot of people who have money, have plenty of money, they sit around and they wait, because I've got some developers, or not developers, some wealthy people I know who they're just waiting for people to bleed, and then they'll go along and buy it because they can. And unfortunately, that's going to be happening a lot. And because of that, there'll be a lot of people probably renting.
Yeah. Warnie, you got a question?
Yeah, right back at the beginning, you mentioned the waka ama and sitting out there, behind rangatato or whatever. What is it about that, bro? I've got a colleague here in Parnell who same thing. He jumps in his waka and disappears, and everybody wonders where he is, but he's in his happy space out there on the water. And it's obviously something that, unless you've got the ability to do that, you don't really understand. But I'm just really interested. I know what he says when I ask the question. Interested.
It's just that you're at peace out there, and you just feel part of the water. Like, I'll sit there, I'll have my feet dangling in the water, and it's just, I don't know, it's just the tranquility you have out there. And you just feel one with the water, So
no goals, Frano, to become world champion, masters,
Mate,
no.
They tried to get me when I first started. They got me in a waka, and it was the middle of winter. I lasted a week, and then I said, I'll come back in the summer. And I said, I'll come back. What are the age groups? And then they told me, and I was 38, I think. So I said, well, I'll come back when I'm in the Masters, and I'm the youngest in the Masters. So we ended up winning quite a few the sprint championships and all that with our teams. So we had a pretty good team back then. Now I just do it as every Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday in the mornings. Me and we either have one walker or two walker, 6-man. Depends on the weather. We go from Takapuna Beach and we go for an hour, and we get up. I get up at 4:15 because I live up in North Harbour. I drive down there. We're on the water by 20 to 6, back by 7:15, and we just do the same thing every morning. If there's some waves or bumps, we'll go straight out. Otherwise, we follow the coast. But yeah, it's something that I do. We do all winter now. I jump in the sea afterwards every time. Even in the middle of winter, even if it's freezing, I just get used to it.
And whereabouts in the waka are you, Frano? You up the front, or are you steering? You in the bow house? Where have they put you?
I am I prefer to be the stroke, actually. I like stroking. After the lockdown, I hope the other boys have put on a bit of weight too, because I'm about 3 kilos heavier than I normally am. So, but yeah, I can paddle anywhere. Really, I got sort of taught by some pretty good paddlers, so it doesn't bother me now. I just prefer to stroke. I think just because even in some of the longer distances, because of what I've done, I'm a bit mentally tougher than some of the fellas. So when the going gets tough or you get tired, I can focus and
Keep going. Keep going. Best race you've raced in New Zealand, long distance.
Best race.
Have you done the Taupo crossing?
No, I haven't done that one actually. The best race. There's been a few hard ones, but I don't know about the best one. I'm just trying to think. The best one I've actually done wasn't here. It was in Tahiti. We did a 3-day race.
Yeah.
That was probably the hardest thing I've ever done. Especially the last day, which was 50-something Ks, and you're stuck out in the middle of the ocean when it's 36, 37 degrees. So that would be the toughest one. We didn't come anywhere, but the Tahitians gave us a hiding. But that is the toughest thing I've probably ever done, really.
And their canoes are lower in the water too, so you're a little bit out of sync. You're sort of out, maybe.
They knew we had a reasonably good team because we stacked our team, and so they gave us a boat or a walker, which was a brick. So we're like, really? You're giving us this? And they're like, you asked for a boat, we gave you one. So
They still about it.
We're still bitter and twisted, I can tell you.
Goodbye, Frano. Goodbye. Well, we're going to give you
it's a little intimidating over there because obviously they're professional, and you turn up, you've been sleeping on the floor in a school with a whole heap of other paddlers, and they turn up in an air-conditioned bus, bring out their rowers to warm up on, and have a pit crew to sort their walker out. I'm like, oh man, we've got a shit show here.
Wonderful sport, waka ama, and I'm pleased you're still keeping fit, keeping well. It's a good reminder for us as well, as we put aside the rugby boots and the league boots, and look after our own children. What you're doing for your own physical and mental well-being. So have a good look at waka ama. I think that's a really good shout out. Well, we've come to our time, and it's been a wonderful evening on a Wednesday in a lockdown here in Auckland. Listening to Frano and his journey over the last 30, 40 years, and what it really takes to reinvent. Doesn't matter whether you're 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, it's the same issue. It's how do you learn from your past? How do you reinvent and get the juice out of the next chapter in life? So we've been listening to Frano this evening, and it's a really wonderful reminder of that. So yeah, Frano, I just want to put a big shout out to you, mate. Yep, when I buy my next house, I will give you a call. That's probably in about 30 years' time.
When you're 60.
But any of you tight buggers out there at the moment listening in, thinking about selling your house, you better shout out to Frano and get him to at least give a price at the very minimum. So yeah, on behalf of us all here, Frano, hey, ngā manaakitanga ki a koe. Thank you very much for this evening. Thank you for sharing your past. Really appreciate that. So I'm going to close with our karakia whānau, and thank you for joining us. Nō reira kia tau. Nā manaakitanga a ngaro ki rungi tēnā ki tēnā o tātou. Kua whakarongo mai tātou i roto i ngā kōrero o tō tātou rangatira i tēnei pō. Ara anō, ki te whakahau i a tātou. Whakahau. Titiro ki a tātou he o mua. Titiro ki te pai o ngā mahi ki mua. Kia tiakina, kia ātamahi, kia mahi waua, kia ringarau pā. Ko te mea nui whakahaunia tō āhua no nurere kia tau. Nā manaakitanga atu ki runga tēnā ki tō tātou. Ke mahia tō mai ki o toi te kupu, toi te mana, toi te reo. Toi ngai tātou, turuturu o te maua kia tīna.
Tīna.
Ami hui e.
Tā kia.
Pō Mārie, fellas. Thanks, Frano.
Pō Mārie. Thanks,
Sorry.
Frano. Kia ora, bye.